Hello, and welcome to Amputee for Life, created to focus on members of the limb loss community and those who support them. We will feature testimonials from amputees, family members, and professionals working within the limb loss community, and include strategies, ideas, and heartfelt stories in the hope of providing greater awareness around the lives of some of the most amazing and resilient people on earth. My name is Jared Taylor, and I will be your host. On today's episode, I've chosen to share my personal story as to how I became a below-knee amputee in the year 2015. Little background, I grew up in the San Bernardino Mountains in Southern California, and at an early age discovered that I loved to run, especially through the woods and the forest. Most of my life, I've continued that love of running and blazing my own trail, and found it to be a great way to work through my problems and alleviate pressures that build up. And I absolutely just loved running. With that being said, it was a beautiful day on July 31st, 2012. And I had just gotten done cleaning my mountain bike. It was pretty dirty, and I washed it and thoroughly cleaned it. And with the idea that I'd go on a bike ride, but my bike was too wet, and I just decided instead I'd go for a run, which was what I typically did anyway. Where we lived at the time, about 2 miles in from our house was a nature reserve, and I would usually run the 4-mile circuit within that reserve and then back home. Beautiful place, very tranquil, and a great place for me to find peace of mind. Well, on this July day that I chose to go for a run, I was out running, I was in the zone, I was running hard, and I jumped from one part of the trail to another part. And when I did that, the trail edge caved out under my right foot. And I made this quick motion to stay up on the trail, so I just pushed myself up, and in that fraction of a second, really, I managed to compress my tibial nerve in my foot, ankle, and in my calf. I also blew out 4 other peripheral nerves and caused a fracture in the center of my calcaneus due to a calcaneal cyst that probably had lived there my whole life. The pain was instantaneous and excruciating. I've managed to twist my ankle, sprain my ankle many times, blow out my left knee twice back in my skiing days. I've taken a lot of hard hits and falls, but I didn't fall. I just pushed myself up to stay on the trail. And that's all it took. I was never able to bear weight on my heel again. At that time, I was several miles in from my home, didn't have my phone on me or any way to communicate to anyone that I needed help getting out of there. Besides that, it's only trail, so there's no way to actually drive into where I was, so I proceeded to walk home. Limp back home, actually. And it took quite a while. I thought I had a bad sprain. I stayed off of it. I iced it, elevated it, stayed home from work. But after a week's time, the pain wasn't going down at all, and it was actually increasing. So I decided to go to the doctor, and I was referred to an orthopedic surgeon here in the area that is very well renowned. And he did some imaging and saw what I had done to some extent. Not all imaging was showing all the extent of my injury. But he proceeded to schedule me for a tibial nerve release. It was probably about 2 months out for my surgery. In the meantime, I was told to just take it easy, do the best I could. As the surgical date came closer, my pain just escalated and escalated. There was twice that I had actually gone to the emergency room due to the excruciating pain, in hopes that my surgeon was on call that he would be able to just pull me right up into surgery that day. Well, both times my plan failed. And at this point, it alerted him to maybe do some more extensive testing and that there might be something more wrong with my injury. Because according to him, my pain was way higher than the extent of the massive injuries that I sustained, which you would think that would create a lot of pain. But he saw it as a sign that there could be something more to it. So instead of having surgery, he canceled surgery and referred me to the University of Washington, where I was referred to Dr. Kimberly Harmon, who was a godsend. And she was at the time the Washington Huskies lead doctor. And so I knew that I was going to someone who knew a lot about sports injury and had a lot of tools in their belt. As I started to see Dr. Harmon, they began doing a lot of diagnostic testing, a lot of injections, a lot of this, a lot of that. And all the while I was thinking to myself, well, when's the surgery going to happen? It didn't take long that I was diagnosed with a condition called complex regional pain syndrome, or also known as RSD. And complex regional pain syndrome is rare. It does happen to people that sustain ankle injuries. So it's something that they see in basketball players and skiers and people that have a lot of impact on their ankles. Well, complex regional pain syndrome is that signal that one receives when you've been injured that you're injured. The problem with complex regional pain syndrome is that never shuts off. It is something that has baffled the medical community. They've tried to chase down the source, whether it's in the central nervous system or the peripheral nervous system, and still it mystifies the medical world. At that point, they really started doing a lot more diagnostics on me, trying to see if anything would alleviate my pain. All the while I was losing mobility as time went on. I spent a year and a half going to UW month after month for these diagnostics and testings and consultations. So after that length of time, I was referred to a surgeon in Seattle who decompressed my tibial nerve in my foot and ankle, but there was no relief. And after many more months of consultations with Dr. Harmon and her team at the University of Washington, I finally met with Dr. Lee Dellon from the Dellon Institute in Baltimore, Maryland. He saw me and thought that I'd be a great candidate to have fly out to Baltimore and perform procedures called neurectomies. Neurectomies are when the section of nerve is cut out, damaged nerve that is cut out, and then the two remaining ends of the live nerve are sunk deep into muscle. When I saw Dr. Dellon in Baltimore, he performed 5 neurectomies between my ankle and my calf. And only time would tell whether or not it was successful. Something I want to mention is every time I had surgery, so the surgery I had in Seattle to decompress my tibial nerve, and then the time that I went to Baltimore was about a year. And then another 8 or 9 months had passed, and I went to the Dellon Institute's sister office in Henderson, Nevada, where I saw Dr. Dellon's partner, who performed 4 additional neurectomies up to just below my knee. Now, when things started out for me with the injury, everything seemed real concentrated as far as pain in my foot and ankle. As I had surgeries, each surgery I had, that complex regional pain syndrome would creep up my leg, little by little, until it got to just below my knee where I had had the last neurectomies performed. Now, at that point, in Nevada, they had performed all the neurectomies that were possible, to all the damaged nerves I had. So there were no more nerve surgeries to be performed, no more nerves to work on. And my pain had just escalated. I was not any closer to greater mobility. And while my nerve surgeries were happening, I also had the complex issue of the fracture in my ankle to my calcaneus. I had simultaneously been seeing orthopedic surgeons in Western Washington who all passed on performing the surgery on my ankle, the reconstruction of it due to all the nerve damage and repairs I had done in my foot and ankle. I was told that there was one more person to see, and he was from UCLA, and if he wasn't going to perform my ankle surgery, no one would. So sure enough, here we are, almost 3.5 years after my initial injury and 3 surgeries in with these multiple procedures. And I see this surgeon from UCLA who, within 5 minutes, refers me back to Seattle, to Harborview, to the amputation clinic for below knee amputation. Now, when that news hit, I wasn't surprised, because I have to say that in all that time that I was waiting to get better, it's almost like my leg took on a life of its own and had a voice. I know that sounds crazy, but I kept hearing this voice within me say, if you take me off, you will get better. You will get back to work. You will get back to functioning and somewhat of a level that I was functioning prior. I knew it wasn't going to be the same. But when I got injured, it took me completely out of the game. I lost my job. I went out on disability. I had state insurance, and all the battles between Washington state insurance and having these out-of-state surgeries prolonged the time between surgeries. So that didn't help matters much. But at this point, was referred to Dr. Douglas Smith at Harborview. Dr. Smith was a giant of a man and quite soft-spoken, but he had an amazing reputation. And at the time, I had no idea really what his reputation was. I learned quickly that he was one of the best amputation surgeons in the country. And so I was so grateful for that. And that's one thing that I feel happened for me, was that every time I had surgery or was consulting with these surgeons and these specialists, I knew that I was in the right hands. I never felt like I was sent to the wrong person. And so when I met Dr. Smith, I knew that I was in the right hands. The problem with meeting with Dr. Smith and him going over the details of what the amputation would be like for me, he was very concerned about the complex regional pain syndrome, because complex regional pain syndrome is so painful. People think, if I could just have this part of my body removed, I will feel better. But the problem with complex regional pain syndrome is amputation is not warranted with someone who has CRPS due to the fear of it spreading further throughout the body, which oftentimes happens. So when I saw Dr. Smith, he immediately began talking to me about an above knee amputation up my thigh. And I instantly rejected that idea, because my right knee is my good knee. I've had my left knee repaired several times due to past injuries, and I really needed to keep my good knee. He didn't agree with me, and so I spent multiple months going back and forth down to Harborview to have this same discussion with Dr. Smith. Explained to him that I will do fine with the below knee amputation. And he didn't believe that I would. And he's the specialist. He's seen this before. But I also knew in my heart what I was capable of. I understood that the worst part of my injuries were in my foot and ankle. Yes, I had all this nerve damage and nerve work done all the way up to below my knee. But I really, really advocated for keeping my right knee. After many attempts of having this type of conversation with Dr. Smith, I tried one more time, and he reluctantly agreed. My amputation was scheduled for December 5th, 2015. I was so thankful to be sent to Dr. Smith. As it turns out, I was his second to his last case before he retired to move to Montana to take care of his elderly father. I'm going to put a pin in that right now and go back to the previous 3.5 years. I've experienced a lot of pain, physical pain in my life. And the pain from my injury was the worst I've ever experienced. But what I found was when you don't think that your pain could get worse, it can and it will. Every time I had surgery, myself and everyone in my family would keep everything we had crossed that this would be the one that would alleviate some pain or get me some mobility. But things were working in reverse. I was becoming less mobile and in more pain. And it was to the point where I was walking with either crutches or a cane or just in a wheelchair at all times. I wanted to try everything I possibly could before having an amputation. Even though I felt like that was going to be the best thing for me, I wanted to try everything. I was fortunate enough to be introduced to Cornerstone Prosthetics based in Everett, Washington. And they had just built a prototype of dynamic bracing for the general public. This dynamic bracing system was created for military personnel who sustained traumatic injuries to their lower limbs and hopes to prevent amputation. And it's a phenomenal product. It's an amazing brace, and it works for many people, but it didn't work for me. And I needed to wear it. We went through the trial for about 4 months before my amputation, and I had to write a daily journal and keep a daily log as to how long I wore it, what the effects were, and it just made things worse for me as far as inability to walk with it on. So after that, the next step was or actually simultaneously, I was referred to the Center for Pain Relief here in Bellingham. So I had been going to the pain center in Seattle and now the Center for Pain Relief here in Bellingham, where they conducted multiple ketamine infusions in hopes that that might alleviate some pain. That didn't help. Nothing changed. Nothing changed at all. So there were so many things that were going on to either get me more mobile or out of pain, but it wasn't working. I reflect on that dark period in my life and the hardship that my wife and I and my children faced while I struggled to make it through every day. Pain getting worse, mobility getting worse, and not having any answers. The only time that I could feel, I guess, any alleviation from the pain and suffering that I was in is my daily baths. I would take a hot bath, extremely hot, get the water as hot as I could possibly stand it. And by doing that, I, I believe that I was able to increase my pain threshold to be able to get me through the rest of the day. So generally, my hot baths I would take first thing in the morning when I get up. And it became a routine and it helped. But that was the only time. It didn't matter what kind of medications or procedures or injections they were trying to get me to take or do. The only thing that helped was a hot bath. And during my hot baths, I would visualize waves, not intentionally, but it would just come to my mind like waves in the ocean, waves of pain, cresting and crashing, cresting and crashing over and over and over again, to the point where that became my meditation. Sit in a hot bath and visualize waves cresting and crashing, crying my eyes out in such terrible pain, not due to the hot water. The hot water felt good. Just the black and blue of my foot and ankle and the collapse of my confidence, my inability to do most things that I normally would do. It was very dark, very hard. And to be honest with you, I wasn't sure how I was going to live anymore. In order for me to describe the type of pain that I experienced, the only thing I could liken it to was it felt like my ankle was in the jaws of an animal snare, and that I had stepped into a hole that happened to be a scorpion nest, and countless scorpions were stinging me all the way up to below my knee. That's the only way I could describe my pain prior to my amputation. So when the time came for my amputation, I was looking forward to it. Although the surgeon was worried and all signs point to no amputation for someone with CRPS, I felt blessed that I was in the position I was in. The morning of my amputation, when I was prepped and getting ready to go, Dr. Smith came in and stood by the side of my bed. And this giant of a man looked down at me and he said, "I'm real nervous about this." And I said, "Dr. Smith, I know you are." And I grabbed him by the hand and I said, "But I know you can do it. I know this is the right way to handle my amputation and my needs. And I will be back to show you that this was the right thing to do." And we smiled at each other and I went into my procedure. Spent a week in the hospital at Harborview and then was released to come home, given all sorts of instructions on what it was going to be like and what I need to do when I get home. And I was told that I would be on crutches for about 6 weeks and that every week I would need to be recasted as I was shaping down after all the immense swelling due to the amputation procedure. Something I want to say about the procedure is Dr. Smith created a method that provided greater comfort and quicker recovery for the candidates that he had, such as myself, wherein he would take the extra skin from my calf and fold it and then use that as a cushion at the bottom of my residual limb. So with all of the nerve surgeries I had done and all the nerve damage and all the numbingness from all of that, and that extra little cushioning that he provided, I was able to don a prosthesis very quickly. One other thing I wanted to make note of with the neurectomies that I had, because on the amputation forums that I look at and I'm a part of, a lot of people bring up the fact that they've been told they have a neuroma. And a neuroma is a tiny cyst which forms whenever a nerve is cut or damaged. They liken the pain of a neuroma to that of a gunshot wound. And by the time I had all my nerves worked on, I had a total of 18 neuromas: complex regional pain syndrome, multiple neuromas, and now an amputation. And on a side note, a couple weeks after my amputation, I did speak with Dr. Smith. And when we spoke, he did inform me that I was headed towards amputation no matter what. It was just a matter of time due to the extent of my injuries. So, yes, I was told that I would be on crutches for 6 weeks as I was waiting to shape down to be able to be fitted for my first prosthetic. It was taking me a little bit longer to shape down. I was on crutches for 16 weeks. And then once I started physical therapy to learn how to shift my weight and don a prosthetic, I learned pretty quickly how to do that. Fast forward to today, I'm about a month shy of being an amputee for 9 years. And wow, what a journey it's been. I'm not the same person I used to be on many different levels. I'm still active. I'm able to skip rope, ride my mountain bike. I can run around a track or through the woods a little bit. Not much. Enough to get my heart going and feeling good. I was an avid snowboarder for many years. I haven't made it back up to snowboard. Every winter I tell myself, this is the winter, this is the winter. But I haven't been able to make it happen. And my buddy that I used to go snowboarding with moved out of state. So I use that also as an excuse not to get back up on the mountain. But if there's anybody out there who wants to go snowboarding with me at Mount Baker this winter, let me know. I need the motivation. So physically, I'm able to do, like I said, most things that I was able to do before my amputation. Mentally, it's taken its toll, but I've been able to rebuild confidence and self-assurance by relearning a lot of things that I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to do again. And for those of you who are wondering, I still have complex regional pain syndrome. It has not spread any further than just below my right knee, where they stopped doing surgeries on me. And for that, I'm so grateful. But I'm in terrible pain. I'm in terrible pain every single day. And through these years, I've just learned to live with it and work through it. Mentally, it's frustrating because sometimes I'd like to don my prosthetic and know that I shouldn't. I really can't, really, because of pain or swelling, which most amputees experience. So then I'm confined to my wheelchair or crutches and limited as to what I could do. But for the most part, I'm able to don my prosthetic every day. And I think due to the fact that I had so much nerve work done and I'm so numb, I overdo it. I wear it too long. It's hard to understand. It's hard to explain having massive pain yet also having massive numbness. It's a crazy feeling. It's unsettling, and nothing feels better to me than taking my prosthetic off. It just feels great. It just feels great. I'm grateful that I can wear it, but it also feels great to take it off. So that's it. Kind of a freak running accident that became really super complicated and resulting in an amputation. Nothing glamorous, nothing heroic about it. It's just something that happened to me. And as a result of my amputation, my life has taken a different course, obviously. And I'm grateful for what I have, and I am grateful for the ability to wear a prosthesis and do most of the things that I like to do. And it's a reminder to me every day that you never know what tomorrow may bring. I would like to say to my fellow limb loss family, I hope that you found something in what I've said that was of value. Keep your chin up. That's all I really want to say. Keep your chin up and know that you're not alone. Thank you for joining us today on Amputee for Life. Please stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, stay well, be safe, and please remember to enjoy the little things.